The grand hall sparkled with chandeliers, flowing flowers, and golden touches, a perfect picture of the success Malik Carter had fought so hard to reach. Guests in fancy clothes filled the room, their laughter and the sound of clinking glasses filling the air. Malik, dressed sharp in his tuxedo, stood at the center, hand in hand with Vanessa Quinn. Vanessa, his stunning bride, was glowing in her custom-made gown, flashing bright smiles as she moved among the crowd of important guests. But while everything looked perfect, Malik felt uneasy. As he glanced around, his mind wandered back to simpler times, days when money and status didn't control his every thought. That feeling stuck to him like a shadow he couldn't shake. Vanessa was happily chatting with a senator's wife, but Malik couldn't focus. He thought about the long road he had taken to get here, from nothing to building a business empire that made people admire and envy him. Yet, deep down, he knew he had paid a price for it. He looked at Vanessa, laughing and shining in the spotlight, and guilt touched his heart. She deserved all his attention, but he couldn't give it fully. He pushed the guilt aside, trying to enjoy the day, even though something heavy pressed against his chest. As the night wore on, Malik moved through the crowd, smiling and shaking hands. But none of it felt real. Every laugh was forced. Every smile was empty. He told himself it was just nerves, but deep down, he knew it was something more. This wedding was supposed to be a new start, a fresh beginning. But it felt like the past was trying to break through, tearing at the walls he had built around himself. Then, everything shifted. Malik's eyes caught a familiar figure among the servers. She was bent over, wiping a table with careful, slow movements. Her hair was pulled into a messy bun, but even like that, he knew her face. Naomi Blake. For a second, he thought he must be dreaming. His ex-wife here, at his wedding? It didn't seem possible. But when she stood up to place a tray down, he saw her profile clearly. The soft almond-shaped eyes he once knew so well, though now they looked tired. Her warm, dark skin still glowed despite everything. It was Naomi, no doubt. And then, Malik's eyes dropped to her stomach, round full. She was pregnant. Naomi didn't notice him at first, busy with her work. But Malik couldn't stop staring. Finally, she turned. Their eyes locked. Shock flooded both their faces. Naomi's hand shook slightly as she clutched the tray. For a few heartbeats, they just stared. Then, she snapped herself back together, quickly looking away and disappearing into the crowd. Malik stood frozen, his mind racing. Why was she here? Why today? And most of all, whose baby was she carrying? The rest of the night was a blur. Malik barely noticed Vanessa or the guests anymore. His eyes searched the crowd for Naomi, but she was gone. His heart twisted with anger, guilt, confusion. He told himself it was just curiosity, but deep down, he knew it wasn't that simple. Seeing Naomi brought back a chapter he thought was closed, one he clearly wasn't over. At the head table, while others toasted and laughed, Malik sat there lost in thought. Memories of Naomi flooded him. He remembered the first time he had seen her, laughing with friends at a little cafe near his college. Her laughter lit up the room. She was different, grounded, kind, and full of heart. Naomi had always believed in his dreams. Their love had been full of passion and fire, but it wasn't easy. They got married young, full of hope but not ready for all the struggles life would bring. As Malik's hunger for success grew, so did the gap between them. He threw himself into his work, leaving Naomi to deal with her loneliness alone. He told himself he was doing it for their future, but deep down, it was his own fear of failure that pushed him. Naomi tried to hold on to their marriage, but the cracks kept growing. Malik could still remember the fights, the nights she cried herself to sleep while he sat glued to his office desk, ignoring her pain. The memory of the day she left him was burned into his heart, her voice shaking as she said she couldn't stay in a marriage where she felt invisible. He hadn't stopped her. His pride wouldn't let him. Now seeing her again, pregnant, working as a server at his wedding, guilt crashed over him like a tidal wave. He thought he had moved on. But Naomi's presence made him realize the wounds were still there, buried deep. As the night dragged on, Malik found himself questioning everything. Had he really moved on? Or had he just stuffed the past away, hoping it would never come back? Why, even after everything, did seeing Naomi awaken feelings he thought were long gone, regret, longing, and a deep ache he couldn't explain? Malik knew he couldn't let the night end without talking to her. The sight of her, pregnant and working at his wedding, was too much to carry. After what felt like hours of searching the venue, he finally spotted her near the kitchen door, stacking trays quietly. She looked smaller than he remembered, more tired, but there was still a stubborn strength about her. Heart pounding, Malik walked toward her. "Naomi," he said, his voice low, barely rising above the noise around them. She froze, her shoulders stiffening. Then she turned, her face guarded, her eyes showing a flicker of surprise and defiance. "What are you doing here?" Malik asked, his voice sharp but laced with something else, worry maybe. Naomi straightened her back, meeting his gaze with quiet strength. "I'm working, Malik." "That much should be clear," she said coolly, though her voice wobbled just a little. A storm of emotions hit Malik: anger, guilt, protectiveness. "At my wedding? Why? Why would you put yourself through this?" he asked, struggling to understand why she hadn't just walked away when she saw his name on the guest list. Naomi's mouth tightened, and she shook her head. "Not everyone gets to live in luxury, Malik. Some of us take whatever work we can find," she said. Her words cut deep, slicing through his pride like a knife. He searched her face for some piece of the woman he once loved, but all he saw was tiredness and hurt. Before he could ask the question burning inside him, Naomi stepped back, her hand moving protectively over her belly. "I have work to do," she said, then turned and disappeared into the kitchen. Malik just stood there, his heart heavy with unanswered questions. The rest of the night passed in a blur. Malik couldn't stop thinking about Naomi, about the baby she was carrying, about the way her voice had trembled when she spoke to him. He needed answers, but he didn't even know where to start. What had happened to her after the divorce? Why was she working like this? And most of all, was the baby his? The thought twisted his stomach in knots. Deep inside, he feared the truth, because if the baby was his, he had failed her in ways he could never undo. The next morning, Malik paced his office, torn apart by guilt and anger. He tried to bury himself in work, but his mind kept dragging him back to Naomi's words. "Some of us have to take what we can get." He hated the thought of her struggling like that, hated knowing that maybe, just maybe, it was partly his fault. Malik couldn't deny it anymore. His own choices had helped put Naomi in this hard place. His non-stop chase for success had cost them their marriage, and now it seemed it had cost her even more. He picked up his phone, ready to call her, but stopped. What would he even say? How could he ask the questions weighing on his heart without tearing old wounds open? Still, Malik couldn't shake the need for answers. He made up his mind. Somehow, someway, he would find a way to speak with Naomi again, even if she didn't want him to. He needed to hear the truth, not just for himself but because he owed her at least that much. An apology. Maybe even a chance to make things right. But as he got ready to reach out, Malik wondered if Naomi could ever forgive him for the pain he had caused. While Malik wrestled with his emotions, Vanessa Quinn started noticing the change in him. At first, she thought it was just post-wedding tiredness. But as days passed, his behavior got stranger. He spent long hours locked in his office, sometimes just staring out the window or pacing the floor. When Vanessa tried to talk to him, Malik brushed her off with vague answers about work stress. Vanessa was sharp, she trusted her gut, and her gut told her something was wrong. Jonathan was hiding something, and that thought made her uneasy. One evening at dinner, Vanessa decided to confront him. "You've been acting strange lately," she said lightly, but her eyes were searching. "Is everything okay?" Malik looked up from his plate, startled. "Of course," he said quickly, forcing a smile. "Just work stress, you know how it is." Vanessa watched him closely. She noticed the tension in his shoulders and how he couldn't meet her eyes. "You're sure that's all?" she pressed gently but firmly. Malik hesitated for just a moment, and that tiny pause deepened Vanessa's suspicions. "I'm fine, Vanessa," he said, a little sharper than he meant to. "Can we just enjoy dinner?" Vanessa didn't push any more that night, but the seed of doubt had been planted. She started paying closer attention, seeing how distracted he always seemed. Her instincts told her, whatever was going on, it wasn't just about work. She had no idea what Malik was hiding, but she was determined to find out. As the space between them grew wider, Vanessa couldn't help but wonder if their perfect marriage was already starting to fall apart before it had even truly begun. As the wedding celebrations drew to an end, Malik still couldn't shake Naomi from his mind. Guests lingered around, the music slowed into soft background sounds, and Vanessa stayed busy taking pictures with friends and family. But Malik felt disconnected, like he was watching someone else's life, not living his own. He sat alone in a corner, holding a glass of flat champagne, his mind spinning from everything that had happened. He had fought so hard to build this life, yet seeing Naomi again made him question everything. The guilt gnawed at him. How could he sit here, surrounded by luxury, knowing someone he once loved was out there struggling so badly? As the staff started clearing the tables, Malik spotted a young server nearby. He discreetly approached him. The young man looked startled, but quickly pulled himself together. "The woman who was working earlier," Malik began in a low voice, "the one who's pregnant. Do you know anything about her?" The server hesitated, looking around nervously. "You mean Naomi," he said, and Malik's heart skipped a beat hearing her name. "She's had it rough, sir. She only took this job because she needed the money. I heard her landlord's been threatening to kick her out. She doesn't talk much, though." Malik clenched his fists, shame and anger boiling inside him. He had never imagined that Naomi's life had gotten this bad. By the time he returned to Vanessa's side, the weight of what he had learned was crushing. Vanessa still looked radiant, her laughter floating across the room as she chatted with friends. But Malik's heart was somewhere else entirely. Malik could barely look Vanessa in the eye. His mind wasn't there with her, it was with Naomi, with the baby, with the life he had left behind. As they walked to the car to head to their honeymoon suite, Vanessa slipped her arm around him, whispering about how perfect the day had been. Malik nodded without much feeling, his heart weighed down with guilt. The beauty of the wedding felt almost cruel, knowing that someone he once promised to protect was now hurting so badly. That night, Malik couldn't sleep. While Vanessa rested peacefully beside him, her arm draped lightly over his chest, he stared up at the ceiling, lost in a mess of memories and emotions. He thought about Naomi, how fast and how deeply they had fallen for each other. Their love had been real, though not without problems. They built it on dreams and promises they thought would last forever. His true partner. But as his success grew, so did his distance from her. Late nights at the office turned into missed dinners, forgotten anniversaries, and broken promises. Naomi had tried to be patient, but he had taken her for granted. He remembered the fights. He remembered the tears. He remembered her standing there pleading, "I just need you to be here," her eyes full of tears, and he had ignored it. He had been too focused on proving himself, too focused on building an empire, to notice the cracks growing between them. And by the time he realized what he was losing, it was already too late. Naomi had packed her bags and walked out, leaving him alone with nothing but regret. Now, all these years later, the pain of losing her still felt fresh. He wondered if she still thought about him. If she still hated him for how badly he had failed her. And now, the baby. Was the child his? The thought scared and thrilled him at the same time, stirring up emotions he hadn't dared feel in years. As the first light of morning crept into the room, Malik made a quiet vow. He couldn't erase the past, but he could try to fix what he could. He didn't know how yet, but he had to find a way to help Naomi and the baby, if the baby was his. Over the next few days, the question of the baby's paternity haunted Malik. He caught himself staring at his reflection, wondering if the child Naomi carried had a piece of him. He didn't want to jump to conclusions, but the timing felt too perfect to ignore. If the child was his, he had a responsibility he couldn't turn away from. But how could he even start that conversation without hurting Naomi more? The idea of opening old wounds made him feel sick. Still, he knew he couldn't keep running from it. He needed to know the truth. So Malik decided to take action. He tracked down Naomi's address through the event coordinator who had hired the catering company. It wasn't hard to find, but it left him feeling heavy inside. She was living in a rundown apartment complex far from the life of comfort he once dreamed they'd have. The thought of her struggling like that made his chest ache. He debated showing up. What if she didn't want to see him? What if he just made things worse? But his need for answers pushed him forward. That evening, Malik drove to the building, his shiny black car looking out of place on the cracked streets under dim streetlights. He felt uncomfortable in his expensive suit as he walked toward her door. He hesitated, his hand hovering at the doorframe, his heart pounding. Facing her again, facing the damage he had caused, scared him more than he liked to admit. Finally he knocked, the sound echoing down the quiet hallway. When the door opened, Naomi stood there. Her face was a mix of surprise and guarded strength. "Malik," she said, her voice calm but cold. "What are you doing here?" Malik took a deep breath, his eyes briefly dropping to Naomi's rounded belly. "I need to know, Naomi," he said softly. "Is the baby mine?" For a few heavy seconds, Naomi didn't move. Then slowly she stepped aside, her body stiff with reluctance, allowing Malik to step into her small, dimly lit apartment. Malik's heart sank as he looked around. The place was barely furnished, just a sagging couch, a scratched-up coffee table, and an old rug that had clearly seen better days. The quiet hum of an aging fridge filled the silence. It was hard for Malik to connect this struggling reality with the Naomi he once knew, the woman who had big dreams of starting her own business and building a beautiful life. Naomi crossed her arms and leaned against the door frame, her posture closed off. "You got what you came for," she said coldly. "Take a good look and go." Malik tried to ignore the harshness in her voice. His eyes landed on a small crib in the corner of the living room. The sight of it made his chest ache. He could only imagine how much she had given up to prepare for this baby. "Why didn't you tell me?" he finally asked, his voice thick with emotion. Naomi let out a bitter laugh, shaking her head. "Tell you what? That I'm barely scraping by? That I'm carrying a child while picking up whatever work I can just to survive? Would it have changed anything, Malik? You made it clear a long time ago that your life didn't have room for me." Her words cut deep. Malik struggled to find something to say. He had no defense, no excuse for the way he had treated her during their marriage. And now seeing the full result of his neglect made the guilt even worse. "I want to help," he said quietly, stepping closer. Naomi's gaze hardened immediately. "I don't need your pity," she snapped. "I've gotten this far without you. I'll keep going." But as she turned away, Malik caught something in her eyes, a flash of pain she was trying so hard to hide. She wasn't as strong as she wanted him to think. Malik knew he couldn't leave things like this. He stood firm, his voice steady. "Naomi, I'm not here to pity you. I just want the truth. Is the baby mine?" Naomi froze, her back still turned to him. The silence felt endless. Finally, she turned around, her arms still crossed protectively over her belly. "Yes," she said in a whisper. "The baby is yours." The words hit Malik like a punch to the chest. He had guessed it, but hearing it out loud made it real in a way he wasn't ready for. He sank heavily onto the couch, his mind spinning. "How long have you known?" he asked after a moment, his voice cracking slightly. Naomi's eyes flashed with anger. "Since the day I found out," she said sharply. "But why does it even matter? You were busy living your life, building your empire, planning your perfect wedding. I didn't think you'd care." Her words stabbed him with guilt. "That's not fair," Malik said softly. "You didn't even give me the chance to care. You didn't tell me." Naomi's face softened a little, but her voice stayed firm. "I didn't want you to feel trapped, Malik. I've been through enough. I wasn't going to beg for scraps of your attention like before." Her raw honesty crushed him. He wanted to argue, to say he wasn't the same man anymore. But deep down, he knew she had every right to doubt him. "I'm not asking for a second chance," Malik said quietly. "But I want to be there for the baby. For you too. Please, let me help." Naomi hesitated. The battle in her eyes was clear. Part of her wanted to believe him, and part of her was terrified to trust him again. "We'll see," she said finally, her voice low. "But don't make promises you can't keep, Malik." The drive back to Malik's big mansion was a blur. He couldn't stop thinking about their conversation. Naomi's words played over and over in his mind, weighing heavily on his chest. He felt like he had failed her all over again. Now there was an innocent child involved, his own child. The realization hit Malik hard. For years, he had thrown himself into his work, convincing himself that success would fix all the mistakes he had made. But now, even at the height of his career, he felt like more of a failure than ever before. He couldn't shake the image of Naomi's tired eyes, her tiny apartment, or the way she stood, like she was bracing herself for another letdown. When Malik finally got home, Vanessa was waiting for him in the living room, her face expectant. "You're late," she said, her voice light but questioning. Malik paused, unsure what to say. "I got caught up with something," he mumbled, not looking her in the eye. Vanessa frowned, sensing something was wrong. "Malik, what's going on? You've been distant ever since the wedding. Is there something you're not telling me?" Her words made Malik's stomach turn. He couldn't tell her about Naomi, not yet. The truth would shatter everything they had built together, and he wasn't ready for that fallout. "I'm just dealing with work stress," Malik lied, forcing a quick smile. "It'll pass." Vanessa didn't look convinced, but she didn't push him that night. She quietly went upstairs, leaving Malik alone. He sank into the couch, burying his head in his hands. He felt trapped, torn between the life he had built with Vanessa and the responsibilities he owed to Naomi and their unborn child. For the first time in a long time, Malik felt completely lost. But one thing was clear. He couldn't turn his back on Naomi or the baby, no matter how hard it got. He had to find a way to make things right, somehow without destroying everything else along the way. Vanessa had always been proud of how well she could read people. And lately, Malik had become a mystery she couldn't figure out. Since the wedding, he had changed. He was more distant, more distracted. At first, she had told herself it was just the stress of getting used to marriage. But as the weeks went by, the distance between them grew clearer. Malik would vanish for hours, offering weak explanations about meetings or work errands. But his words lacked the usual confidence she was used to seeing in him. Vanessa started feeling like a stranger in her own marriage, and the thought scared her. One evening, as they sat together at the dining table, Vanessa decided to gently test him. "So, how was your day? You've been out a lot lately," she asked casually. Malik froze for a brief second before replying. "It's been hectic, just tying up some loose ends at work." His answer came too quickly, too smoothly. Vanessa noticed the way his hand tightened around his glass. "You've been working late a lot," she added lightly, "especially for someone who just got married." Malik gave a strange smile. "You know how it is. Deadlines don't care about personal milestones," he said. But something about his answer didn't sit right with her. Vanessa had been with Malik long enough to know when he wasn't being honest. Later that night, while Malik was in the shower, Vanessa sat on the edge of the bed, her mind racing. She wanted to trust him. They had just promised forever to each other. But no matter how much she tried to push it away, the feeling that he was hiding something huge refused to leave her. Whatever Malik was keeping from her, Vanessa was determined to find out. Meanwhile, Malik couldn't stay away from Naomi. Even though she kept her walls up and turned down his help over and over, he kept going back. At first, he told himself it was only for the baby, making sure the child had what they needed. But deep down, he knew it was about more than that. Each visit brought back memories of the woman he had once loved so deeply. And he couldn't help but wonder if any part of her still cared for him too. He started showing up with groceries, small gifts for the baby, even trying to offer her money, though Naomi often refused it. During one visit, he noticed how completely exhausted she looked. She sat there, her swollen feet propped up on an old chair. "You shouldn't be working like this," Malik said, setting a bag of groceries on the counter. "It's not good for you or the baby." Naomi gave him a sharp look. "And what do you want me to do, Malik? Sit around and wait for you to swoop in and save the day? I don't need your charity." Her words stung, but Malik didn't back down. "It's not charity," he said firmly. "It's responsibility. That baby is mine, and I'm not just going to stand by and watch you struggle." Their conversations often ended in tension, Naomi's pride clashing against Malik's determination to help. But little by little, her resistance began to crack. She started accepting small gestures, a ride to her doctor's appointments, a few hours of rest while Malik helped with chores. Though their relationship was far from perfect, there were moments when the walls Naomi had built around herself started to fall, and Malik caught glimpses of the vulnerable woman still inside. Each time he saw it, it only strengthened his resolve to be there, no matter how hard it would be. One evening, as they sat together in Naomi's small living room, she opened up in a way that caught Malik completely off guard. Seated on the couch, her hands resting gently on her belly, her eyes distant, she spoke. "Do you know what it was like, Malik?" she asked softly, her voice trembling. "Watching you chase your dreams while I felt like I was fading away." Malik sat there, stunned, unsure what to say. "I never meant to make you feel that way," he said quietly. Naomi gave a bitter laugh. "I know you didn't mean to," she said. "But that doesn't change the fact that you did." She began to speak about their marriage, about the loneliness she had carried while Malik worked late nights and traveled for business. "I wanted to support you," she said, her voice cracking. "I believed in you, in us. But somewhere along the line, I stopped feeling like your wife, and started feeling like an afterthought." Her words were raw, filled with pain she had clearly kept bottled up for far too long. Malik listened in silence, his chest tightening with regret. He had always thought he was doing the right thing by focusing on his career, but now he saw just how blind he had been to Naomi's suffering. "I don't want your pity," Naomi said, wiping a tear from her cheek. "I've made peace with the past. But I need you to understand, I can't let you come in and out of my life whenever it's convenient for you. This baby deserves better. I deserve better." Her words hit Malik hard, shattering any fantasy he had of easily stepping back into her life. He realized then that rebuilding her trust would be the hardest thing he had ever done. But looking at her, so strong yet so hurt, he knew he couldn't give up. He had to prove himself not with words, but with real actions, for Naomi, for the baby, and for the hurt he had caused. Meanwhile, the tension between Malik and Vanessa only grew. Vanessa wasn't blind. She could feel the distance between them growing wider every day. His excuses for being late got weaker. His eyes wandered when she talked to him. He was distracted in ways that were impossible to ignore. It was the kind of subtle change she had seen before, the kind that told her something was being hidden. One evening, as they sat quietly in the living room, Vanessa decided she couldn't keep pretending. "Malik," she said, her voice steady but serious, "I need to know what's going on. You've been so distant lately, and I feel like I'm losing you." Malik looked up from his phone, caught off guard by the sudden confrontation. "I don't know what you mean," he said, but even he could hear how empty the words sounded. Vanessa pressed her lips into a thin line. "Don't do that," she said sharply. "Don't act like everything's fine when it's not. You've been acting strange since the wedding. I need you to be honest with me, what's really going on?" For a moment, Malik thought about telling her the truth. He pictured confessing everything, about Naomi, about the baby, about the guilt that had been eating him alive since that night. But fear held him back. He wasn't ready to destroy everything he had built with Vanessa, not yet. Malik wasn't even sure how things would turn out with Naomi. "It's just work," he said finally, avoiding Vanessa's eyes. "There's a lot on my plate right now." Vanessa didn't believe him, but she didn't press any further. Instead, she sat there, quietly studying him, her mind racing. She couldn't shake the feeling that he was hiding something big. As Malik went upstairs, leaving her alone in the living room, Vanessa felt a flicker of doubt creep into her heart. She had thought their marriage was strong, unbreakable. But now, she wasn't so sure. And as her suspicion grew, so did her determination to uncover the truth. Meanwhile, Malik found himself imagining a future he hadn't thought about in years. A future with Naomi, and the child she was carrying. His visits to her apartment had become a regular thing. Even though their conversations were often tense, he felt a stronger and stronger pull toward her. A growing sense of responsibility for her, and for their unborn baby. He started picturing himself as a father. Holding the baby for the first time, teaching them to walk, being there for every important moment. The thought filled him with both excitement and fear. He had spent so long chasing after success that he had never really thought about what it would mean to build a family, to truly be present for someone else. One evening, as they sat together on Naomi's worn-out couch, Malik found the courage to speak. "I want to be there for the baby," he said quietly, his eyes drifting to the crib in the corner. "Not just financially, but in every way that matters. I want to be part of their life." Naomi glanced at him, her expression unreadable. "You're saying that now," she said cautiously. "But what happens when things get hard? What happens when your other life starts pulling you away?" Her words hit him hard because they were true. Malik knew his history. He had let ambition come first before. But this time, he was determined to prove her wrong. "I'm not the same man I was when we were married," he said, his voice steady. "I know I let you down before, but I won't let the baby down. I won't let you down." Naomi's eyes softened a little, but she stayed guarded. "We'll see," she said after a pause. "Actions speak louder than words, Malik." Her careful response only made Malik more determined. For the first time in a long while, he felt like he had a real purpose, something bigger than his career. A chance to be the man he had always wanted to be. Still, even with Malik trying harder, Naomi struggled to trust him. She couldn't forget how their marriage had crumbled under the pressure of his ambition. She couldn't forget how many times he had chosen work over her. Letting him back into her life, even just for the baby, felt like a huge risk. She appreciated the groceries he brought, the small errands he helped her with. But part of her kept wondering if all of this was temporary. What if he lost interest again? What if he disappeared when things got tough, leaving her to pick up the pieces alone? One afternoon, as Malik helped her assemble a second-hand crib he had brought, Naomi finally spoke up. "You've been showing up a lot lately," she said carefully. "But I can't help wondering how long that's going to last. What happens when this stops being convenient for you?" Malik paused, his hand stilling on the wooden frame. He looked up at her, his face serious. "It's not about convenience, Naomi," he said firmly. "I'm here because I want to be, not because I have to be. I know I've given you every reason to doubt me, but I'm not going anywhere. I mean that." Naomi wanted to believe him. But the wounds from the past were still fresh, still painful. "You say that now," she said softly. "But what happens when your other life, your wife, your business, starts pulling you away again? I'm not going to let myself or this baby be anyone's afterthought." Her words cut deep. But Malik didn't back away. "I can't change the past," he admitted. "But I can do better now. I will do better." Naomi didn't answer right away. She studied his face, looking for any sign of lies. Finally, she gave a small nod, though the doubt in her eyes didn't fully disappear. Still, to Malik, it was a small step forward. And for him, that was enough to keep fighting for her trust. Malik believed that with time and effort, he might finally win Naomi's trust again. Meanwhile, Vanessa's patience had run out. She had noticed Malik's constant absences, how distracted he was, and how he seemed more distant with every passing day. Her growing suspicions pushed her to take action. She hired a private investigator to find out the truth. It wasn't a decision she made easily, but she couldn't shake the feeling that Malik was hiding something big. A week later, the investigator came back with the answers Vanessa hadn't been ready for. The photos showed Malik visiting a modest apartment, spending hours inside, even carrying groceries. But the biggest shock came when she saw a photo of Naomi, visibly pregnant, standing at the door, resting her hand on her